They threatened to demolish my family's cabin while standing on land they didn't even know I owned. The lake, the parking lot, the very ground beneath their designer heels, it was all mine. They thought I was just some hermit with binoculars and a beard. They had no idea they'd just picked a fight with a wildlife biologist who owned their whole damn view. When I came back to Osprey Lake, I wasn't looking for trouble. After 3 years tracking endangered species in South America, I wanted quiet. My grandfather's cabin had always been my refuge, a weathered place filled with his journals, bird calls, and the smell of cedar. He passed it down to me along with a wooden chest full of maps I hadn't even opened yet. I just wanted to write my book Listen to Loons and watch the sun slide down the waterline in peace. That peace lasted until the convoy showed up. 5 luxury SUVs, all metallic paint and tinted windows, rolling up the gravel road like they owned the mountain. Out stepped Victoria Harrington, the HOA president of Evergreen Estates, with a diamond ring big enough to flash Morse code. She looked at my cabin like it was a disease she could catch. "Mr. Foster," she said, waving a pink violation notice in my face. "Your property violates multiple community standards. You have 30 days to comply, or we'll take action." I blinked. Community standards. This land's been in my family since the 1960s. We're not part of your HOA. She cut me off with a laugh, the kind people use when they think you're beneath them. "Oh, but you are now. The boundaries were redrawn 5 years ago." Behind her, her husband, Maxwell Tanteeth, too white to be natural, was already filming me with his phone. "As you can see, followers," he said to the camera, "we found a classic example of property devaluation in the wild. This structure is bringing down home values by 20%. I could feel my pulse thudding in my neck. The other women behind her whispered loud enough for me to hear disgusting primitive. One of them pointed at my bird feeders. Victoria smirked. "And, by the way, birdwatching requires HOA approval." When they finally left the paper crumpled in my hand, I stood there staring at my grandfather's cabin and whispered, "What the hell is happening?" That night I tore through his old journals looking for answers. Under a loose stone in the fireplace I found a small combination safe, one only he could have hidden. Inside, yellowed deeds, survey maps, and legal documents showing my grandfather still owned the lake and a large piece of land that the HOA now used as their private parking lot. I stared at the papers until dawn, my hands shaking. The next morning I met Maya. She showed up on my porch holding a thermos of coffee and a half smile. "I saw the HOA welcome wagon yesterday," she said. "They came after me too when I planted native grasses. Apparently, natural is offensive here." When I told her what I'd found, her lawyer instincts kicked in. "Liam, this isn't just paperwork," she said. "If these documents are valid, you own the lake and they're trespassing every single day." Before I could respond, we heard engines down by the shore. Construction crews were setting up barriers right where I'd seen a pair of rare mountain phoenix birds nesting. I grabbed my binoculars. Victoria was there in her perfect suit, pointing at the trees like she was rearranging nature itself. I stormed down the hill. "You're on private property." Victoria didn't flinch. "This is a community improvement project, Mr. Foster. We're turning this eyesore into a beach." "You can't," I said. "This area is protected habitat." Maya stepped up beside me, calm but firm. "Can we see your environmental permits?" Victoria's smile was pure venom. "All approvals are on file at the HOA office," she said. "Now please go play with your birds elsewhere." By the time we got back to the cabin, a new violation notice was already taped to my door, "Unauthorized scientific activity." I laughed, but it sounded more like a growl. They were trying to break me down inch by inch. Maya suggested we visit a man named Walter Reed, a retired judge who'd been close friends with my grandfather. When we showed him the deeds, his weathered face lit up. "James Foster," he said, "that old fox. He sold off bits of land to the developers but kept the heart of it the lake and parking lot. Gave them use for 30 years. That deal expires in 3 months. It was like the ground shifted under me. Everything started to make sense. My grandfather hadn't just left me a cabin, he'd left me leverage. But the HOA didn't stop. Maxwell posted edited videos of me online calling me a science hermit, mocking my beard, claiming I was squatting illegally. Overnight, the comments poured in, people telling me to move back to the woods to stop blocking progress. Then the internet went out. My access road was gated off. Even my mailbox was locked. For a while, I thought about leaving, just walking away from it all. What was I fighting for, really? A decaying cabin. A pair of birds. My grandfather's ghost. I sat on the dock that night watching the moon ripple across the water, feeling small and defeated. Then, one of the phoenix birds returned to its nest. Its copper feathers glowed under the moonlight, defiant and alive. That was my answer. I wasn't fighting for a house. I was fighting for a legacy. The next evening, Maya and I showed up at the HOA meeting. The clubhouse looked like a country club imported straight from Beverly Hills, marble floors, white columns, and people sipping Chardonnay. Victoria stood at a podium showing slides of their Osprey Lake beautification project. My cabin appeared on screen with a giant red X through it. I could feel my fists clenching, but Maya squeezed my arm. Wait for it. When the floor opened for questions, she stood up. Maya, Santiago resident. 2 quick questions. Why does your brochure promise untouched wilderness while you're building a resort, and has the board informed residents that the lake isn't HOA property? The room went dead silent. Victoria's smile froze. That's ridiculous, she said. The lake belongs to the community. Actually, Maya said, holding up a deed, it belongs to Mr. Foster. And the HOA's 30-year usage agreement expires in 90 days. Right then, Walter Reed walked through the door. I can confirm that he said, these documents are legally binding. Pandemonium. People shouting, Maxwell still filming but his hand shaking. Someone yelled, we've been parking on private land. Another asked, can he really lock us out? Victoria slammed the podium. This meeting is adjourned, she shrieked. But it was too late. The cracks were showing. That night, my power was cut. When I stepped outside, the smell hit me, chemical acidic. The water shimmered with an oily film. Dead fish floated along the edge. I dropped to my knees. They'd poisoned the lake. By dawn, the EPA and Sheriff's Department were there. Walter had called them and the story exploded. Reporters showed up with cameras asking how an HOA could be involved in an environmental crime. Maya showed them the video evidence, the forged inspection permit signed idiotically by Maxwell himself. But Victoria wasn't done. She threw a lavish environmental fundraiser on my property the next day. Tents, champagne banners reading the future of Osprey Lake Resort. When she started her speech about sustainable luxury, we walked straight up to the stage. I raised my voice so everyone could hear. I'm Liam Foster, the legal owner of this lake and the ground you're standing on. I held up the deeds. Your HOA has been trespassing for years. Gasps. Maxwell's camera swung toward me. Victoria turned red. Security, she barked. Walter stepped forward. Touch him, and you'll be the ones charged with trespassing, he warned. I'm a former district judge. I've reviewed the documents myself. Maya handed out copies of federal wildlife protection filings. There's a nesting pair of mountain phoenix birds here, she announced. Endangered species. Disturbing them is a federal crime. As if on cue, one of the birds soared overhead, its copper feathers catching the sunlight. The crowd gasped. Investors began slipping away quietly, murmuring about lawsuits. Victoria tried to salvage it, shouting into the mic. This is all fabricated. Foster forged everything. But Dorothy, the HOA secretary, walked up beside me and handed me a folder. Check the signature, she whispered. The demolition permit she'd filed was fake, signed by Maxwell, not a county official. When I showed it to the sheriff, he nodded grimly. That's enough for a warrant. Within hours, the event collapsed. Victoria and Maxwell fled their mansion across the lake, but not fast enough. Deputies caught them heading for the Canadian border with cache hard drives and a laptop full of emails titled Operation Phoenix Removal. They'd literally written out their crimes. When the sheriff confirmed their arrest, I didn't feel victory, just exhaustion. The lake was poisoned, the birds gone, the community divided. But then something shifted. Residents came forward apologizing, offering to help. The same people who'd called me the hermit were now standing by my side with buckets and gloves. Days later, as cleanup crews worked the shoreline, I saw a flicker of copper and gold over the water. The phoenix birds had returned circling above the recovering lake like a promise. Victoria and Maxwell were charged with environmental crimes, forgery, and fraud. Their mansion was seized and later turned into the Osprey Lake Environmental Education Center. The HOA rebuilt itself from the inside out, led by people who actually cared. I never wanted to be anyone's hero. I just wanted to protect what mattered. But I learned something standing on that dock at sunset watching those birds reclaim their home. Sometimes justice doesn't come from fighting for power, it comes from refusing to surrender what's right.